Welcome back everybody to our EICMA coverage here in Milan, the biggest and best motorcycle show in the world, and we're here at Moto Morini, a very popular stand with the Italian motorcycling public, understandably with the brand, but also you got to say they always have something interesting to look at. I came here last year, some beautiful looking bikes, and they've actually got 4 more for 2025. So here we go with each of those bikes and everything you need to know about them. Now first up, the one that caught my eye is their new Corsaro GT, which is an adventure tourer style bike, has a little bit of Multistrada V2 about it, and it's built upon their new 750cc V-twin platform, which we saw last year in the Corsaro Sport. No massive details on the specs for this one, but they do say it'll make 96 horsepower peak, which ain't bad for a 750, and also that it will be limitable down to 48 horsepower for A2 license compatibility, which that's fair enough, but you have to be a fairly wealthy and brave A2 license holder, I think, to take on one of these bad boys. It's pretty fancy in spec, you see. It's got Brembo 4-pot radially mounted calipers. On 320mm discs, you've got features like cornering ABS and even blind spot warnings. And so this is going to be a fairly premium priced offering, one would imagine. And so yeah, I can't see too many being snapped up by beginners. Still, for everyone else, it looks like a really good, sporty, attractive looking touring bike. And the dimensions all look pretty good too. They're calling it 215 kilograms, 835mm in the seat height. So right in that sort of commanding riding position, but not super tall. And there is a 19-litre fuel tank, which should give you plenty of range, especially with a 750, which isn't going to be as thirsty as some of the larger capacity adventure tourers. So yeah, potentially a competitor for something like a Multistrada V2, or even perhaps the Tiger 900 GT from Triumph, for example, although this bike is on 17-inch wheels front and rear, and so maybe it's a little bit more road biased and on a par with something like a Yamaha Tracer, for example, or BMW's F900 XR. Still, always good to have more options on the market, especially when they look as good as that, and it's one that I'll definitely be trying to get hold of to test out in 2025. Now, for something completely different though, it's this bike behind me, which is the new Moto Morini Alltrhike, but it's all one word, so I'm not sure if you meant to say Alltrhike or Alltrhike as one word. I don't think that rolls off the tongue that easily, but it is a cool looking bike and kind of fits into this booming 450 adventure bike kind of segment. So we've seen bikes last year like the CF Moto 450 MT being really very popular, aggressively priced, and almost the antidote to the very expensive and heavy large capacity adventure bikes that are a bit of a handful off-road, it has to be said. And there are more options now for this year. We've just seen yesterday the KTM 390 Adventure R. That looks like it's going to be another good option. And even the BMW F450 GS concept bike, which we absolutely loved, and I'd love to know what you think of it down in the comments. But yeah, Morini are throwing their hat into the ring as well. And this one gets a 450 parallel twin like the CF Moto and the BMW concept. So potentially for some people would be an advantage over something like a single cylinder KTM 390. Now it'll be A2 license compatible, so it'll be 44 horsepower peak, they say. They're also giving it a figure of 44 Newton meters of peak torque. And while it doesn't sound like a great deal of power, it should be fairly light at 175 kilograms. Clearly, this one is built with off-roading in mind because you've got the 21-inch front, it is a 17 rear, and they've got tubeless spoke rims which lace to the edges, so potentially a little more convenient for puncture repairs for a lot of people. And it sits fairly tall on KYB suspension with 210mm of travel on the fork and 190mm of travel on the shock. Now, they didn't say so much in the spec sheet, but you can see there's some adjusters on the top of the forks there, so there will be an element of adjustability, and this should be a good one for riding off-road. What I will say, though, is the seat height does look a little bit more road biased. It comes in at 820mm, and so certainly not as tall as that new 390 or the F450 GS concept that we looked at yesterday. In fact, even looking at it here on the stand, you can see it's not quite as tall a bike. It dips down from the saddle. It's not like a one-piece rally seat, and so maybe that is built for that A2 market with them in mind, as opposed to like entirely pitching this bike to proper hardcore off-road rally riding. Still, should be pretty decent on the road as well. I mean, there's always going to be some limitations of having a big 21-inch front, but you've got decent braking. There's a single disc with a 4-pot caliper on a 320mm rotor. You've got a 2-pot caliper at the rear on a 255mm disc. There's an 18-litre tank for plenty of range, a decent dash as well. I like the look of that, and it's got some connectivity built in, and also an adjustable windscreen, which is going to help with giving you some wind protection on the motorway, for example, if you push it up. But equally, if you want to get up over the bars when you're riding off-road, or you want an unobstructed view of the trail ahead, then you can always slam it back down. So look, I'm liking the look of this one. It does have its work cut out a bit with so many new bikes in this, booming sector, but certainly there's plenty of interest over here on the stand. So yeah, it is a nice looking new dash, but if you do want to get that sort of navigation functionality and media and stuff like that on your bike, and you don't have a big TFT display, then the way to go about it, we'd recommend, is Quadlock. We're very grateful to them for sponsoring the channel and also supporting this event, which means we can get all this great coverage. Back home, we fit Quadlock mounts to pretty much all the bikes we test, so we use their Handlebar Mount Pro, their vibration dampener to keep the phone's camera safe from harmful vibes. We use their wireless charging head as well, which keeps the phone juiced up on the bike without having to even plug it in. And they've also got a great ecosystem of other products for all sorts of activities like flying or boats or running or cycling, and even some brilliant camera accessories like this little tripod selfie stick thing, which we've been using to capture a lot of our social content for Instagram and stuff like that. Genuinely, we believe these are the best phone mounts in the business, so do check out the link down in the description below. And once again, a massive thanks to Quadlock for their support and helping us to cover EICMA in all this detail. Now look, perhaps the two bikes that intrigue me most though on the Moto Morini stand are the new 350cc V-twin powered bikes. First up, we've got the 3.5. That's a name that goes back in Moto Morini history, and you can see that reflected in the looks and paint job as well. But they brought it back for 2025 with this new updated platform. So look, another A2 friendly bike down at 350cc's, and it makes 32 horsepower peak at 8,500 RPM. Not massively powerful, and 31 Newton meters of peak torque at 6,500 RPM. So not massively torquey either, but what is intriguing is getting a genuine V-twin in a bike like that, whereas the rest of the market will either be a single or a parallel twin with a 180-degree crank, which doesn't sound anywhere near as good, or occasionally a parallel twin with a 270-degree crank to give it some of the V-twin sound and feel, but it's still a bit of an imposter for a genuine V-twin. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing if I can get one to try out and see what that feels like to have such a small capacity V-twin. They're a real rarity nowadays. What it will give you as well is a very slim bike versus a parallel twin, so that's good for getting a narrow standover, which means you can get your feet down nice and easy. And they do say it'll already be very low in the seat at 780 mil, so I'm expecting this one to feel very nimble and agile and like a bike that you'd want to ride in traffic and stuff like that, because you can easily get both your feet down. Now this one gets quite a traditional looking frame. It's a steel cradle, which plays into that kind of heritage look, but they have managed to make it really quite impressive on the weight front, despite a steel frame. So 165 kilograms dry, which will probably put it fueled up at around between 180 and 190, which I think is really good for definitely a sort of learner style bike. And yes, it rolls on. 17-inch wheels front and rear, upside down fork at the front, which looks like it might have a bit of adjustability, and then a single 4-piston brake at the front with a 320mm disc. So looks like it'll be a bit of fun, but I would fully expect the styling and the sort of heritage of this bike to be one of the key selling points. It really is striking looking. I think that proper V-twin really helps with the aesthetics as well, and so I'd love to know what you think of it down in the comments below. Thing is though, with it being a proper V-twin, it also makes sense probably to have like a cruiser style bike on this platform or a bobber style bike, and that's exactly what they've done with the Rumble. Same engine, so the 32 horsepower, the 31 Newton meters and all that good stuff. It looks like a similar frame as well, but it does have some slight differences in terms of the chassis, the most prominent being that big balloon front tyre, which gives it that proper cruiser aesthetic. No seat height, I don't think, on this one. I couldn't get a press release for it, but naturally you'd expect it to be a little bit sat back, maybe the bar's a bit higher and swept back, and more of that comfortable cruiser riding position. Although I will say, for me, because it looks like quite a fun bike to ride, probably a regular, upright, naked, sporty riding position like they've got on the 3.5 would be the one that I'd go for and a bit more appealing. Still, this one looks nice and stealthy. I like the sort of blacked out look, and what I did get on this one as well was a good look at that TFT display, which looks nice and modern and feature laden, and so that's another tick for the two bikes. I think it's the same on both. It's got like a round physical housing to give it the right sort of look for this style of bike, a retro and a cruiser, but it looks like you'll find modern features like menus and modes and connectivity within. Now, no prices for any of these bikes yet, but from what I can tell, they're coming at the back half of 2025, so definitely some cool stuff to look out for. They're not a particularly big brand in the UK, but they are available there, so do keep your eyes peeled, and I'd love to know what you think of them, like I say, down in the comments below, so do let me know. I'll also put on the screen now our playlist of all of the other bikes that we've covered this week, so do check it out if you want to stay up to date, and do hit subscribe as well, because we've got a couple more videos coming here from EICMA, but also in a couple of weeks we've got Motorcycle Live in the UK, where we'll do a big recap of each manufacturer, so do stay tuned for that. A massive thanks for watching this one, and we'll see you in the next video.